On stage, they are irreplaceable stars. Their voices touch the souls of listeners, but behind the scenes, many of them are slowly falling, not because of age, but because of invisible ghosts' pressure, depression, violence, and sometimes unnamed forces. One artist died of an overdose, but witnesses said he was beaten before being left outside the hospital. A female singer died in a hotel room, but her final recordings disappeared without a trace. And that's just the beginning. What you're about to hear is not just 19 of the most mysterious and suspicious deaths, it's 19 unanswered cries for help. Whispers of things showbiz never wanted the public to know. This video is not for the faint-hearted, but if you're brave enough to look deep into the dark side of glory, keep going, and don't leave without leaving a voice for those who can no longer defend themselves. 19. Jesse Belvin, the assassinated note. In the world of R&B, Jesse Belvin was once called the lullaby prince of black hope. His voice, smooth as velvet, sweet as a nighttime prayer, brought tears to even white audiences in the conservative South. And few people know that Jesse Belvin was also a quiet pioneer. He didn't just sing to sell records, he sang to challenge segregation. But that, in all likelihood, killed him. In 1960, Jesse did what no one else had dared to do: perform in front of a mixed audience of white and black people, right in Little Rock, Arkansas, where Jim Crow laws separated seats and dreams. That night, the audience was in tears. On the night of February 6, 1960, Jesse finished a historic concert in Little Rock, Arkansas, the first in the state to have a black and white concert hall. Amid a society struggling with racial segregation, he walked off the stage to cheers. But few knew that throughout the performance, the organizers had been receiving death threats. A police officer backstage recalled, "There was a very distinct feeling that someone was waiting for Jesse to come out of the spotlight." A few hours later, the car carrying Jesse, his wife, and the driver crashed on a dark road leading out of the city. The car exploded. The wife died at the scene. Jesse was dying and died before reaching the hospital. The police closed the case with the conclusion: mechanical accident, brake failure. But there was one strange detail. The report made no mention of a loose front tire, something the mechanic eventually confirmed in a separate investigation. Jesse's family later recounted that he had received a handwritten, anonymous letter that contained only one line: "If you dare sing with the whites, you will have no voice to sing with, and even stranger." Jesse's record label refused to release the last song he recorded, "Let's Sit Together," a ballad celebrating equality. The original has never been released. The master tape has disappeared from the archives. A private investigator who reinvestigated the case 20 years later said, "I can't say who did it, but if you call it an accident, I've never seen one so well orchestrated." Jesse Belvin's death was not simply a death. It was the final chord of an artist who dared to dream bigger than the times, and a chilling warning that music, when it comes to justice, can sometimes be strangled with the singer's blood. 18. Billy Stewart. The car drifted away and the truth drowned. Billy Stewart, with his massive frame and trademark staccato singing style, once made listeners exclaim nobody sang like him. But beyond his music, Billy was always dogged by suspicion from his record label, from his producers, and even from his bandmates, not because of his talent but because of his ambition. In 1970, Billy announced that he wanted to produce a self-produced album of social protest, inspired by the rising civil rights movements. The album was tentatively titled Thick Soul, and he would tell the stories of poor, neglected, and exploited black people by the industry. But the album was never recorded. On January 17th, Billy and 3 musicians took a bus to Columbia, where they were to have a rehearsal for a new song. They never arrived. The bus went off a bridge and into the river. The bodies were completely bloated, and the police closed the case with the reason the brakes failed due to the ice. But there was one detail that was hidden from the media at the time. The stage manager in Columbia confirmed that Billy had called at 8 a.m. saying, "Someone wrecked my car last night. The front tire was making a strange noise." No recording of the call, no report. Everything disappeared with the river. A few days after the funeral, Billy's family returned home to find the door of his record store broken down. All of his new song manuscripts, songs about black pain, were missing. The record label said they had never heard of a project called Thick Soul. But an anonymous technician later revealed that he had listened to a sample of Billy's track, with the lyrics, "If I don't sing it loud, will you still bury me silent?" The question that has never been answered: who would benefit if Billy Stewart disappeared? And why, until now, has no one dared to investigate? Billy didn't die in an accident. He was swept away in time because his lyrics were too real, and when the music was drowned in the river, what emerged was endless regret. 17. King Curtis, saxophone bleeding right in front of the door. Amidst the soft and wild soul notes, King Curtis's saxophone seemed to cry out for help to an entire generation, but in real life, Curtis lived a quiet life, rarely argued, and avoided controversy. This made his death a shock. On August 13, 1971, Curtis had just finished a recording session for a song called Starlight Riot, a song said to be about police violence. He returned to his Upper West Side apartment to find a stranger blocking the door. The man, later identified as Juan Montanez, refused to leave. They exchanged words. Curtis was stabbed twice in the chest, blood running down the stone steps like an unfinished song. Montanez was arrested, saying it was just a neighborhood dispute. But one detail that has never been mentioned: Curtis had received 3 anonymous phone calls the week before, with a hoarse voice threatening, "If you release that song, we will silence your saxophone forever." In Curtis's apartment, a friend found a handwritten, unsent letter that read, "I know I'm making music they don't want to hear, but if I keep quiet, who will play it to the children growing up in the dark?" After his death, the song Starlight Riot was pulled from the project. No stations played it. The record label terminated the contract for unknown reasons. And so, Curtis not only lost his life, but his legacy was finally silenced. There are deaths where there are no gunshots. There is only the intermittent sound of a saxophone in the night, like a last wish that the world tries to forget. But for those who have heard King Curtis, they know that music and that death were no accident. 16. Johnny Ace, the Prince of Love Songs and the Bullet Without a Name. Johnny Ace was the musical lover of millions of young black girls in the early 1950s. His voice was as sweet as honey, and ballads like Pledging My Love made many young hearts flutter. But behind the image of the Prince of Love Songs was a lonely soul, living in a state of exhaustion due to the pressure of touring, rifts with the band, and contracts that imprisoned talent. In 1954, at the height of his fame, Johnny suddenly passed away in a shooting that was considered an accident while playing the Russian game. But many people, including members of the band, never believed it was true. It was Christmas Eve, after a show at the City Auditorium in Houston. Johnny returned backstage, had a few drinks, and played with a few band members. His girlfriend, Olivia Gibbs, was sitting next to him when Johnny pulled the gun from his pocket, half joking. "If the bullet doesn't go in, we'll live." Right a second later, a gunshot rang out. Johnny collapsed, blood staining the chair cover. The police arrived within minutes. The official verdict: accidental self-inflicted gunshot, but other things were wrong. Band member Curtis Tillman once said in an interview Johnny never played with guns. That was the thing he hated the most. And one detail that was overlooked: the gun didn't belong to Johnny, but to his tour manager, with whom he had a financial dispute just days earlier. Another female band member, Gloria, said that minutes before his death, Johnny had gotten into a heated argument backstage with a stranger, who was never identified. No one ever identified him. Johnny's family, for decades, maintained that their son had been murdered. A relative received an anonymous letter after his death. With a single line, "The silence will keep the rest of the family safe." The press called it a death joke, but the public never found it funny. Johnny Ace was only 25 when he died. His final ballad was played repeatedly on the radio for weeks afterward, an eerie farewell. But to this day, the bullet that killed him remains one of the darkest mysteries of early R&B, and perhaps the truth will never be sung. When a beloved voice disappears amid gunfire and darkness, we lose more than just an artist. We lose a tender part of an era. Let us live to tell the story of what they never got to tell. 15. Bobby Fuller, The Body in the Car and the Band Song. Bobby Fuller was a rock and R&B phenomenon. the voice and writer behind I Fought the Law, a song that rocked American radio in 1966. He was young, handsome, neatly combed, and always wore a bright suit, the clean image of a rocker who knew how to keep himself. But behind that suit was a thirst for creative freedom, to go beyond the limits imposed by his record label. And then, one afternoon in July, he was found dead in his car in front of his apartment, his body burned, his face covered in bruises. The police said suicide, but what happened around him sent a chill down the spine of the entire music world. That morning, Bobby did not show up at the studio as scheduled. His best friend, Jim Reese, went to his house to look for him and found his blue Dodge parked unlocked in the lot. The smell of gasoline was strong. When the door was opened, Bobby was slumped in the driver's seat, mouth open, shirt ripped, skin burned. There was an open gas can next to him, but there was no lighter, no sign of fire. Oddly, all the papers in his wallet had been taken out, as if someone was checking his identity. The medical examiner ruled that he died of asphyxiation, but the report omitted a detail. Fuller had bruises on his face and wrists, indicating that he had been restrained before he died. The police did not investigate the case as a homicide. Many colleagues believed that Fuller was involved in an underground music dispute. He had said he would quit a major label to release an album exposing the dirty business. A week before his death, Fuller received an anonymous fax with the warning, "You write songs, don't write incriminating statements." Bobby's family said he was cheerful and showed no signs of depression. They believed he had been silenced. Thousands of fans attended the funeral. The song I Fought the Law was pulled from many radio stations for weeks because it was insensitive to the circumstances. But that only made the public angrier. They didn't believe it was a suicide. Some people believe Bobby recorded a demo exposing his executives before he died, but the recording has never been found. Bobby Fuller didn't die of sadness. He may have died of a desire to tell the truth. When an artist dies from being silenced, the question isn't why did they die, but who didn't want them to live on. 14. Donny Hathaway. The voice fell 15 floors and the music was locked. Donny Hathaway was a true musical genius. His voice was mesmerizing, warm, and had a depth of soul that few could reach. But behind that light was a silent battle with mental illness, depression, paranoia, and sudden bouts of incontinence. On January 13, 1979, Donny fell from the 15th floor window of the Essex House Hotel in New York. The police said he jumped, but those closest to him didn't believe it. That evening, Donny had just finished a demo session with his longtime collaborator, Roberta Flack. They were working on a love song called You Are My Heaven. Roberta said Donny looked happy, even joking about returning to the stage, but after saying goodbye in the hotel lobby, just hours later, his body was found slumped on the second-floor glass roof. No suicide note, no message, and an unusual thing: the hotel windows were designed not to open wide enough for someone to accidentally fall out. The housekeeping staff reported hearing a loud bang in Donny's room before the window broke. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. When the security guard opened it, the room was cold, the radio was on, and the desk contained a song manuscript with the final line, "They want my voice, but not my truth." The line was never confirmed to be Donny's. The original copy disappeared afterward. Donny's manager denied that he had any suicidal thoughts. "Donny is planning a tour," he said. "We have a new contract." Some colleagues said Donny had talked about being stalked, someone trying to destroy me from the inside, in an era before the concept of mental health. Such statements were considered a symptom of illness. But could he be telling the truth? His family never spoke publicly, but fans still recite the lyrics he once wrote. "Someday we'll all be free." And they wonder, was Donny unable to be free in his own body and mind, or in a music system that would not allow black people who were too smart to live long? Donny Hathaway was more than a voice. He was a voice, and his death was a song cut off in the middle, as if someone didn't want the end to come. 13. Junior Parker, the soul of the blues and the surgery that no one believed was a coincidence. Junior Parker was not a star who was too famous in the press, but in the hearts of blues lovers. He was a treasure. His voice was like burning coals. His storytelling style through music made anyone who listened to it feel like they were sitting by a winter fire, listening to a brother tell his life story. But behind the stage lights was a lingering sadness. He lived his whole life in the media's ignorance, overwhelmed by white stars who covered his music. In 1971, after a long period of headaches, Junior was hospitalized for what was considered a relatively simple brain surgery. But just a few days later, he suddenly passed away, and to this day, many people still do not believe it was a natural death. A few weeks before he was hospitalized, Junior Parker was still performing regularly. He once told close friends that he was feeling unwell but still under control when he was admitted to the hospital. The doctor said the operation was only to relieve intracranial pressure. There were no signs of danger. But what made the family suspicious was that after the surgery, the doctor did not allow relatives to approach him for the first 48 hours. A nurse, who did not want to be named, revealed to a local reporter that she had witnessed the team leader yelling at someone in the operating room for setting up the wrong equipment according to the procedure. When Junior died, the hospital released only a brief statement: post-operative complications. There was no investigation. No one was held accountable. His family asked for an independent review, but it was never accepted. A journalist who followed the case said something was being covered up. No one dared to say it, but everyone felt it. After his death, his songs were suddenly used by many other white singers and sold well. A painful question lingers in the hearts of fans. Did Junior Parker leave at the right time, or was he pushed aside to make way for someone else? His death had no state funeral, no TV tribute, but in the hearts of those who heard him sing, they knew he was more than just an artist. He was a witness to a forgotten generation, and that loss, no song can heal. 12. James Carr, a broken voice and a heart lost in the dark. James Carr is the man with the most painful voice in the history of soul music. When he sang "The Dark End of the Street," the whole audience fell silent. Because it was not just a song, it was a confession of a generation divided by race, poverty, and isolation. But James Carr lived his whole life in the darkness of schizophrenia. He was in and out of the hospital like a daily meal, sometimes sane like a sage, other times sitting in the corner of the studio crying. He finally died in 2001. The cause of death was listed on his death certificate: heart failure, but no one witnessed his last breath, and no one knows how he died. In the last weeks of his life, James lived with a niece in Memphis. The niece said that James often woke up in the middle of the night, saying, "They are listening to me." He thought it was a symptom of his old illness, but strangely, a few days later, the mini recorder in the house disappeared. James panicked, saying that someone had sneaked into his room at night. The whole family thought he was paranoid. But then something strange happened. James's medicine box had been changed. The medicine tasted more bitter. When they took a sample of the medicine to be tested, they found that the lithium level was 3 times higher than normal. The doctor refused to explain. On the morning of January 7th, James was found unconscious in his bed. No injuries, no last words. No one was by his side. The police arrived, confirming natural death. But what shocked the family even more was that just a few days later, a stranger showed up at the house, claiming to be a copyright agent, and demanded to inspect all the documents related to the unreleased songs. The family refused, but no one knows what happened next. Some of the songs were re-released under someone else's name. Some music critics still whisper in the community James Carr has a lot of recordings that never saw the light of day. Maybe someone wanted to keep him quiet forever. James Carr did not die of illness. He died in a world that never truly understood his soul. And his death is a sad echo of an era when the most talented people were the loneliest. 11. Jackie Wilson, the icon who had his lifeline pulled off the stage. Jackie Wilson was the embodiment of stage energy. He was known as Mr. Excitement, the man who drove audiences crazy with just a swipe of his foot and a glance. But few people knew that Jackie had been stabbed almost to death for love, had gone bankrupt because of his manager's extortion, and had been locked in an exploitative contract for years. On the night of September 29, 1975, while performing Lonely Tea, what made people angry was not just that he collapsed, it was that he lay in a vegetative state for 9 years. in poverty, and no one in showbiz cared. The press reported that he had suffered a heart attack, but the sound man at the show claimed that Jackie had complained about a strange, sweet taste in his water. The water was never tested. A doctor on the resuscitation team later said in an interview he could have survived if he had been put on a ventilator, but there was an inexplicable delay in his shift. Strangely, after Jackie fell into a coma, all his medical records were moved to a separate archive, off-limits to anyone except the insurance company's lawyers. Jackie's family couldn't afford to care for him. He was moved to a rundown nursing home, where he was photographed curled up in a dark room. Only after fans wrote letters did the press report on him again, but by then, it was too late. In 1984, Jackie Wilson died, leaving behind nothing but his immortal music and a bitter remark from an old friend he sang for the world, but died in silence. Jackie Wilson was more than just a forgotten artist. He was a heartbreaking example of how the entertainment industry can neglect the people who made it famous. And he deserves to be remembered as someone who burned himself out to bring light to his audience. If you've made it this far, it means you care, not just about the music, but about the fate of those who made history. But the 9 deaths are just the tip of the iceberg. The next 10 deaths, perhaps even their loved ones, dare not speak out. Which of them do you think were victims of a conspiracy that has remained hidden to this day? 10. Zulema Kuso, the voice that disappeared with the truth. Zulema Kuso was once described as the voice hidden in the golden clouds of R&B. She was the voice behind many of the most iconic soul songs of the 70s, collaborated with Aretha Franklin, and sang lead vocals in the group Faith, Hope, and Charity. But Zulema's career didn't go as far as it should have. She largely disappeared from the stage, from the media, and eventually from public memory. In 2013, Zulema passed away quietly. No media reported the details, there was no public funeral, and no one knew the real reason for her death. In her final years, she lived a reclusive life in Tampa, Florida. Neighbors said she rarely left her house. A delivery man once saw her frail, but he politely smiled and said he was working on a final musical project. Strangely, shortly after Zulema died, all the recordings she was working on disappeared from her personal computer. The family did not provide any details. The medical report was not released. An old friend of Zulema's said that she had written a letter denouncing her record label for suppressing her and stealing her copyright. That letter was never found. Rumors began to spread among the public. Did Zulema know something and was forced to keep quiet? Zulema did not die of illness. She died invisibly, in a music world that had once praised and then forgotten her. And for those who remember, it was a suspicious and painful departure that chilled them to the core. 9. Minnie Riperton, the goddess of octave and the decision of destiny. Minnie Riperton is an icon of extraordinary singing. She was called the goddess of octave because she could reach unimaginably high notes, melting even the most hardened souls. The song "Lovin' You" became a hymn to tender love. But behind the light came darkness. When Minnie discovered she had breast cancer at the age of 29 instead of seeking immediate treatment, she hid her illness and delayed chemotherapy. Some say it was a personal decision, but some in the music industry believe she was under immense pressure from her record label, worried that the truth would hurt her sales and image. In her final days, Minnie often sat alone in the studio, writing in her diary and recording lines about her fear of disappearing. A technician recalled her saying, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being forgotten as if I never existed." When she was finally hospitalized, Minnie was very weak. But there was one strange thing: the hospital refused to release her medical details. A final recording she left behind, intended for a posthumous release, was withheld by her record label and has never been heard. Fans wondered, was Minnie prevented from speaking out about her illness? Was her career more important than her life? Her death was a bitter lesson for the entertainment industry, where sometimes a voice is more precious than life. But Minnie Riperton, despite her short life, left behind a legacy that melted even frozen hearts. 8. David Ruffin, the soul of the Temptations and the Fall. No one believed. David Ruffin was the soul of the Temptations, the irreplaceable voice in My Girl, the song that captivated a generation. But Ruffin was also a rebellious soul. He got into drugs, argued with his manager, and demanded his name be at the top of the group. Fired. He still lived wildly, loved fast, and spent a lot of money. In 1991, he was said to have died of a drug overdose. But what haunted everyone was that he was found lying on the doorstep of a Philadelphia hospital, unrecognized, without identification, and no one knew who had taken him there. An acquaintance in the industry recounted just a few hours before, David appeared at a private party with many powerful figures in the music industry. He was drunk but still sober, and said, "I have something that will shake them." No one knew what it was. A bruise on his neck, 2 broken fingernails, and a wallet emptied of money led his family to believe that Ruffin had been assaulted, but police concluded that there was no evidence of foul play. Longtime friends, including former Temptations members, believed there was foul play. Some believed he had been forced to overdose on drugs to keep quiet. The rumors were further fueled when a personal diary kept for years was never found after his death. David Ruffin may have lived a life of tumult, but he did not deserve to die quietly and mysteriously. He was an indispensable part of soul history, and if the truth was buried, it was up to his fans to dig it up through memories, suspicions, and unrelenting love for a voice that once rocked America. 7. Florence Ballard, the flower cut from the Hall of Fame. Florence Ballard was the heart of the Supremes, co-founder of the greatest girl group in Motown history. But fame did not protect her from cold rejection. After many conflicts, Florence was forced to leave the group, lost all contracts, fell into depression, alcoholism, and poverty. Many people said she could not control herself, but relatives said she was isolated. No one in the music industry reached out to pull her back. In 1976, at the age of 32, Florence suddenly died of a heart attack. But that death left a series of questions that have never been explained. A week before her death, Florence applied for social welfare. The staff said she was emaciated, but her eyes still lit up when talking about music. She said she was writing a memoir. A day before her death, she fainted in the bathroom. But strangely, when the ambulance arrived, her manuscript, always kept in a drawer, was gone. The family claimed that someone had broken into the apartment a few days earlier. Florence's death was announced briefly. No investigation was conducted. But music lovers still refer to her as a symbol of a talent denied. And to this day, the question of who let her fall from the throne of fame remains unanswered. Florence Ballard did not die of weakness. She died in the isolation that the industry had built. And if we remember her, let us remember her with kindness to those who were silenced. 6. Tammy Terrell, the fallen angel amidst the false glory. Tammy Terrell was a shining light in her immortal duets with Marvin Gaye. Her voice on Ain't No Mountain High Enough was a sweet promise to a generation of love amid separation. But behind the bright smile was a body suffering from a brain tumor, and after fainting on stage several times, Tammy died at the age of 24. Her death was attributed to illness, but for decades, the public whispered about another truth. Before her death, Tammy had been beaten by an ex-boyfriend. Many in the music industry confirmed that she often came to the studio with bruises on her body. A doctor who treated her said that the head injury may have accelerated the progression of her illness. The day she collapsed for the last time during a performance with Marvin Gaye. The lights were still on, but Tammy did not wake up. Strangely, several of her diaries, documenting her emotions and the pressure from her management, were never published. Marvin Gaye fell into a deep depression after her death. He once said, "I think she was murdered, but not by one person, by the system that forced her to live a lie." That quote was cut from many biographical publications. Tammy Terrell died as a young woman, but her voice still resonates in the hearts of those who have truly loved, truly suffered, and know that sometimes love is not enough to save a person. 5. Sam Cooke, the man who was shot and the truth locked up. Sam Cooke was the king of soul. The voice on A Change Is Gonna Come was more than just music, it was the manifesto of a movement for life. But Sam was more than just an artist. He was an independent producer, the first black man to control his contracts, records, and money, and that made him a thorn in the side of many powerful people. In 1964, Sam Cooke was shot to death in a motel in Los Angeles. Police ruled it self-defense. but every detail of his death is chilling. That night, Sam took a strange woman to the motel. Then the woman disappeared, along with his wallet and clothes. Sam rushed out to find her, wearing only his coat. The motel employee, an older woman named Bertha Franklin, said he stormed in and she was forced to shoot him. But witnesses at the scene said he was shot 3 times, including once in the chest as he collapsed. A photo of the scene shows Sam lying on his side, his arms scratched as if he had been in a struggle, his face bruised, and his pants off. His family believes he was beaten before he was shot. And more importantly, no one investigated the woman who accompanied him. The press quickly closed the case, but Sam's friends say he was preparing to publish documents denouncing discrimination and manipulation in the music industry. Sam was about to do what no one else dared to do to free himself from the white hands that controlled black music, said one relative. But he didn't make it. Sam Cooke was more than a man who was murdered. He was a man who carried the dreams of an entire community. His death, obscured by the defense of self-defense, remains a wound that has never healed in the heart of America. 4. Otis Redding, the voice that fell from the sky and the question hangs. Otis Redding was the soulful voice of the American South, who poured love, pain, and hope into every ballad. But behind the calm exterior were struggles with racism, power struggles, and a sense of being swallowed up by the white music establishment. In December 1967, on the cusp of becoming the greatest soul artist of all, Otis was killed in a plane crash. But the weather was clear, the plane was well maintained, and the pilot was an experienced pilot. No one knew why the plane crashed into a frozen lake. An air traffic controller later admitted that he had lost contact a few minutes before the crash. A final Otis recording with lyrics hinting at a storm in the system was also canceled. Fans forever wonder, did Otis die in an accident, or did he fly too close to the forbidden zone of artistic freedom? 3. Marvin Gaye, the son killed by the father's shaking hand. Marvin Gaye is the voice of love, lust, and rebellion. But few people know that he was beaten by his father as a child, living with religious obsession and sexual conflict. In 1984, in a fierce argument, Marvin's father shot him in his home with a gun that he had given him. But in the days before, Marvin always said, "I feel like someone is pushing me toward destruction." A personal assistant said that Marvin had planned to leave home, start over. But the night before he was shot, he called crying and said, "I won't live to see my 45th birthday." The police concluded it was a domestic murder, but public opinion believed that Marvin was hiding something deeper, and perhaps that death was not just a shooting, but the collapse of a soul that no one understood. 2. Michael Jackson, the King and the Last Pill. Michael Jackson was not only the king of pop, but also the first global black icon who dared to penetrate and change white entertainment culture. But the more famous he became, the more isolated he became, living amid hundreds of millions of dollars and countless accusations. In 2009, Michael was found dead in his mansion, after his doctor injected him with a dose of propofol, a drug only used in operating rooms. The death was recorded as a medical accident, but millions believed it was a planned murder. His assistant said that Michael once whispered, "If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone around me." He was also preparing to return to the stage with the This Is It tour, something that made many believe that he had become too dangerous for those in power. Michael's death was not just a personal tragedy, it was a global loss, and one that still haunts the world. 1. Whitney Houston, the angel who drowned in the spotlight. Whitney Houston had a divine voice, but lived in a silent hell, forced to be the perfect model for black people. She had to suppress her sexuality, her love, and her vulnerability. On February 11, 2012, Whitney was found dead in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Police said she had taken drugs and slipped, but her family insisted she was sober, preparing to return to the stage. A friend revealed that she said, "I saw the lights, but I didn't see myself in them." The autopsy report showed signs of a blow before her death, but no one was investigated. She died like a candle that was snuffed out just before it could burn again, to millions of viewers. Whitney didn't die of addiction. She died of not being able to live her truth, in a world that only wanted to hear her voice, not her people. Their lives were more than just hits. They were pain, silence, and unfulfilled dreams. They died in doubt. But music lovers always felt the loneliness behind the stage. We can't change the past, but we can choose to remember it with understanding and gratitude. Every like, every share from you is a way to revive the once silent voice. Thank you for not ignoring the names that history seemed to have forgotten. Let's keep these musical souls alive in this world with recognition and appreciation. Leave a comment. Share your thoughts on the artists that haunt you the most. Let their memories live on through the words from the hearts of the audience.